Welcome back to the grind, everybody. Man, another amazing, awesome week. We got some things coming down the pipeline, some things in the works. The kingdomgrind.com is going to be available soon. And we also have a community that we're going to have available soon.
Yeah.
Just feeding into business owners, weekly trainings, live demonstrations, a lot of cool things coming up and super excited about. So just kind of wanted to start the show off with that. Also, in the wherever you listen to podcasts, there's usually a button at the top that says send a text. You can click that and it'll go directly to Coach Martin and I. So if you guys want to call in or text into the show, go ahead and feel free to do that. Those are just a couple things I want to touch on before we get started today. So I have Coach Martin here with me again. How's it going?
Good. How's it going, Dylan?
Good. You having a good week so far?
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, it's awesome. There was a couple of things that I wanted to touch on this week. Crystal and I had gone to a conference, and it was more for like a hair salon, hair industry. And one of the things that came up was leadership and how important leadership is in your business, how much it impacts your team. And I took away quite a few things on leadership and how we should show up for our teams. And I just wanted to kind of dive into that and see where your head is at as far as leadership goes, and then kind of go down that rabbit hole and kind of have a back and forth on that.
Yeah. No, so it's a good topic for sure. I think it's a topic where, I got to definitely, think about it. You don't want to be harsh when you say things, but I think today leadership is, I really want to use the word overrated, but not meaning that we don't need leaders. 100% we do. What I mean is I think a lot of times, we just throw certain people in charge that really have no business being in charge, and we think they're a leader. And then ultimately the people that are underneath them, they're going to suffer because the ceiling's low. It's kind of like how high is your ceiling in your house? If you go to a business, the ceiling's higher. It's the same way. So having leadership that is over you, that they're very good at what they do. They've been able to move the needle wherever they've been at, and to truly learn from them to me, it's vital. I think it's a must when it comes to scaling. Like I said, I think the downfall with our society today is, everyone thinks they're a leader, and if your knowledge is right here, how are you going to get people to here?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's one thing I took away from this weekend is no matter where you're at within your business, you could be doing $10 million a year. You can still be improving. And I think that's where it's vital to have mentors. One of the people I listen to, they're doing $250 million a year. They still have a group of mentors that they have around them of people that have done 500, 700 million. And I just think it's going back to kind of what we talked about last week a little bit as far as like continually learning and not letting pride get in the way of like, oh, I'm doing 10 million a year, I'm good. No, it's like we should always be in a state of learning, and like going to this conference, getting fed by some, great speakers that I learned a couple things, and it's like, I think as leaders, we should always be, like the word says, leading the way. We should always be in the front and not the back, right? And so I just took away, like, how can I be a better leader within the salon? How can I be a better leader in my home? How can I be a better leader just in my life in general and the people that I surround myself with?
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a good take. I like it. I do. And I think the thing about it is whenever people are to the level where they're making, 7-8 figures a year or 9 figures, and in this particular person's instance, usually by the time you get there, you've been extremely developed where it's now no longer a question. You're going to have leaders, right? I remember one of the gentlemen was one of my mentors that the last year I was with him, he made $50 million, but he had multiple coaches that he hired. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now the outside, the layman would say, well, why do you need a coach? You just made 50 mil. But he's like, well, you don't get it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I agree with you. And what happens is, honestly, the more money you make and the more you develop and the more you make, really, to be honest with you, the more coaches and mentors and leaders you're going to have over the top of you, because you understand that it's like the lifeblood of of what it is that you need to be able to get to wherever it is you're trying to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of touches on another point that I wanted to talk on today was hiring and bringing a team on that you can lead. I know a couple people in my life that own businesses, but they don't want to hire. Like they're scared to hire and they don't know the process. And they're comfortable where they're at, which, some people may just be comfortable doing it by themselves. But I think using the excuse of like, I don't know what it looks like. I'm scared to hire somebody and then fail. And it goes back to that failure mindset. I think, though, at times as leaders, we need to be able to step up if we do want to grow and step out in faith and, hire those team members that can propel us to the next level. Like, we should not be doing a $10 an hour, $15, $20 an hour task that can be outsourced. We should be focusing on the $50 an hour, $100 an hour, $150 an hour task, right? And I think that's even where I'm looking at where in my life can I outsource some of these tasks, whether it's a VA or whatever the case may be. How can I get more time back?
Yeah.
So like, for an example, at the salon, right? If it doesn't get answered at the salon, the phone call then goes to my cell phone. I can pick up and manage the call. I could hire a VA for that. Like, there's no reason that I should be getting the phone calls if it's not picked up at the salon, right?
Yeah.
Like, the stylist at the salon will call them back, but you always want to try and get that initial phone call because, you could always lose that client if you don't answer the phone.
Yeah.
So instead of I could take the phone call, but that's an area where I could outsource that for $10 an hour, $15 an hour, or per call and save all that time and energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. So there's a couple pieces in there I want to touch on. So if the audience doesn't know what a VA is, that's virtual assistant. But ultimately, I think, one, you're right. As a business owner, you want to get to the point where you're only dealing with MMAs, money-making activities. Yeah. So if it's not a money-making activity, you need to cut it, have somebody else do it. But I think what happens with a thought process of a lot of times we just, we forget to make the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
So, and what I mean by that is like, what's the main thing? Like, why are you building the business that you're building, right? What's the purpose? So you fill that in, and then you realize that, when you're building a business, man, it's a lot of work. It's, you're not, you got to roll up the sleeves. You're grinding. It's like kind of like the whole thought process. The 9 to 5 pays the bills, but the 5 to 9, right, builds the legacy.
Yeah.
And it's many, many of those days, if not years and years and years. But the thing about it is, you want to get to the point eventually where you utilize that money to buy back your time. So if you're not doing that, then you're missing the boat. And I'll give you an example, and I won't mention a name. I know I have a friend of mine who his father is very, very wealthy. He's built a very good life, built a very great big business, made a lot of money. And, we were having this conversation, and, he was talking about how his father was, really wasn't around a whole lot. And I get it now at the beginning, right? You're building it all not, but you got to the point where he should have hired all that out. You can get so caught up in hey, I'm working all the time. You want to get to the point where you start buying back your time. Time's a limited resource. Money is not. So once you're building, your business starts scaling, yes, you hire employees, start with VAs, hire employees, hire people that you can, and it's actually twofold. One, you get to buy back your time and now spend the time with your family, people that you love. Check. But also, I look at man, I get to pour into my employees.
Yeah.
I get to empower them. I get to teach them things that they ain't going to learn outside of here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I have the opportunity to kind of be that person that's going to be able to pour into them, get them thinking bigger, help them. So that'll serve them, one day. So I kind of look at it like both. Yes, we're doing ourselves a service to be able to have time to spend with our family and the people we love, but we're also every single employee that we can hire, we could change their life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like this conference that we went to, we had taken our manager with us, and she was able to get poured into.
Yeah.
And I think, as Christian business owners, we should be pouring into the people that work for us, just like we would anybody else. It was funny, well, not funny, but at this conference, the hair industry is very much demonic. There's just a lot of demonic activity, things that are just not Christian oriented, right? And one of the speakers had gone up on stage and was doing some, like, teaching people some weird stuff. Well, Crystal and I were just standing there, and we have our, manager with us.
Mm-hmm.
She sees us just standing there, not participating, and then she chooses not to participate. And it's like, now we're feeding that into her of like, hey, this isn't okay. We're going to stand up for the truth, whether we're the only ones not doing it or not, right?
Yeah.
And Crystal and I were just sitting there praying the blood of Jesus. And, once it was all said and done, the speaker says, did anyone whatever. They asked the question, and this little old man raised his hand, and she called him up on stage. And I told Crystal, Jesus needs to be brought to this industry. This guy gets up on stage, and he's like, I just want to give all the glory to Jesus. I just want to, I pray to Jesus. I get my comfort from Jesus. And he's like talking about Jesus, and the speaker that was doing this stuff just started bawling on stage. And it's like everyone else, even if they're Christian, they're all in there doing the stuff that she was saying. But it's like, it takes the light in the darkness to reveal those things. And not only did, we sit there and pray, and then this man step up and present Jesus in this type of environment, but our employees saw the power of Jesus through this whole thing as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's, as Christian business owners, we have to step into that and pour that into our employees.
Yeah. I think it kind of even taps into, you go back to, going back to leadership, right? Your job as a leader is to set the tone. Your job as a leader is to lead from the front. I've heard people say lead from the middle, lead from the back. No, you're not a leader. You're not leading anybody. You lead from the front, you set the tone. And studies were done. There was a study done once, Dylan, where they took it was 50 people. They put them in a room. They gave them all a question, and it was whatever the question was. Hey, what do you see? And then it was set up where the first 20 people would say something totally opposite of what the answer was, but it was the same answer over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So then when it got to the people that weren't actors in this study, they all agreed with the lie. You know what I mean? So when you look at human behavior, that's what happens. So a lot of times, if we're not leading from the front, if we're not hey, no, this isn't acceptable, what happens is everybody starts doing it. And not only everyone starts doing it, now the people that are underneath you end up doing it as well. So you got to give credit for that man to be bold, to be able to go up there and, he could have got ridiculed, and he just did it.
Yeah.
And not only did he do it, but God always honors obedience.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a big problem is. Most people aren't willing to be obedient, and they're not willing to move their feet. He raised his hand. He could have got ridiculed. He went up on stage, and he was obedient. And you saw obviously what the Lord did with it. Amazing story.
Yeah. No, it kind of put things in the Bible in perspective for me, because I think of Paul and all these people that were in the Bible going to these places where they're heavy into demonic activity.
Yeah.
And how Crystal and I felt in that moment of at first of just standing there while everyone else is doing everything, it could feel awkward. It could feel man, we're going against 100% of these people almost, know? And it just put things into perspective as far as the Bible goes. Man, what were they going through when they were going into these cities and towns, right? I was just man, I couldn't even imagine.
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, everything's spiritual anyways. So when you really think about it, you know what I mean? You see something crazy going on, and it's not that there's craziness going on. There's spiritual. There's spirits and demonic stuff that's making that stuff go on, right? So that's the crazy thing about it. But, they had to go through that. But here's the interesting thing. That craziness has been going on since the beginning of time, right? But it subsided when those people were bold. Paul, they took the gospel, they did it, and they drove out all that craziness. Now, a lot of them obviously lost their life, and they did the thing that they had to do. But, man, you talk about a great example of a leader.
Yeah. That's
a leader right there. He didn't care what happened to him. He didn't care if he was thrown in jail. Most of us would be crying and complaining, and I can't believe this has happened to me. He didn't care. He was no, because he understood that it was all spiritual. He had a work to do to drive this nonsense out. And obviously, not to get too deep into it, but we're in a country that, you could see what's going on. Same thing, right? Where, half the stuff that's going on is demonic.
Yeah, I wanted to get your take on this piece a little bit. Well, it was interesting. There was two speakers. The other ones were just talking about business stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But two speakers. One was about meditation. The other one was doing the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found very, very interesting was a lot of their principles you could pull from the Word.
Yeah.
But what I had noticed, and this has been talked about widely, is like what Satan does is he pulls God's Word and then moves it towards yourself. He doesn't even move it towards him. He makes you start thinking about yourself rather than others. Mm-hmm. And that's what I had seen with even like the meditation is like, oh, your inner self. And it's like all about self, and taking Jesus out of what they're actually doing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get your take because I thought it was just fascinating and interesting, like how some of these principles are in the Bible that they're doing, but they're changing it from Jesus to themselves.
Yeah, and that's been going on for a long time as well. So what happens is you'll have, and we always mess stuff up, but I think again it's spiritual, right? There's a demonic piece going on to it. So when you look at it, like you think of a video game. I've never been in the games, but let's just say you're in the games, whatever that game is. Somebody created that game. They put all the rules in place, how you got to operate. When you lose, you do these things. You lose to get coins. You know what I mean? It's all like
Mario Golf.
Yeah, 100%. My Mario Golf. Yeah. So that's kind of how. So it's really the same process. So God created everything and all the rules within it, and if you follow the rules, there's reward. If you don't follow the rules, you get in trouble. It's very simple, right? So the thing about it is the rules that he puts in place, the principles, or I like to call them the success principles, they work for everybody, whether you believe in the Lord or not, because his word is true and the principle will work. But what's happened is sometimes people will find a thing that works, a principle that works, and then what they'll do is they'll serve the principle instead of the person that created the principle.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And I think that's where we get lost. That's why you see these religions that are based around like, meditation or, whatever, speaking and all of this stuff, when in reality, it's a principle that the Lord put in, but it's never about the principle. It's about the person that created it or the God that created it. And that's where we differ from them, because we know that God created these principles. We worship the Lord. We do the principles because he tells us to do it. They don't understand that, and they worship the principle. So that's where the thing is. But yeah, you want to, and there's power. There's power in, there's power and there's truth and all of these things. And when you look at it from a surface, like, the things they do, they work. The problem is what we talked about. We're not worshiping the principle.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's what I found fascinating, especially with like the meditation, like meditating within yourself and finding peace within yourself. I'm pretty sure the word says meditate on the word.
Yeah.
Like the Bible talks about meditating on the word, but society or, people that believe in the principle, meditating, they're finding it within themselves, which is obviously from Satan,
Yeah.
So, yeah. There was quite a few things that I took away from this weekend. And I think leadership, employees, and like showing that leadership to employees, because it was cool because our manager, she just didn't understand like the business side of things, and just kind of like, I think as a leader, sometimes you kind of know what's going on behind the scenes, but your team doesn't. And I think that's where transparency comes in. So it's like, Chris and I are like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that. And like, nobody has the context that we have. And they're like, why do we need to do all this? So I thought it was cool too, like with her going to this event, she started seeing some of this context of like what Crystal and I were, why we have been presenting all this stuff, or like the directions that we've been wanting to take within the business. And she's like, man, I think after this conference, like I get it. And it fed her in a way to where now she wants to step up and do more, because now she has the context. And I think one thing I took away from that is just transparency, even transparency with your team, of like, hey, this is what's going on, which is why we need to do this. And now you can get everybody to rally behind the one objective. And I think it's so important to have your team behind you rather than you trying to like do this, do that, do this, do that. Like, no, let's all get on the same page and work on this together so we can all go up.
Yeah.
So
I like it. I do. I mean, I'm one where, I'm a believer there's a divide on this, but I'm a believer that you hire for culture.
Yeah.
And then you train up and, you know what I mean? And it's just interesting. And I've, been in a position where I've hired a lot of people and I've had to fire a lot of people, you know what I mean? And, you always feel bad, when you have to fire somebody, but, when somebody wasn't willing to give 100% and do the work, then you don't feel as bad, you know what I mean? But, for me, that would kind of be a non-negotiable. I'd have to have somebody that was driven, that was whatever the case. And if they weren't, they would be working somewhere else. I would have to let them go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's got to be, it's kind of like you have 4 tires, but if one of them's flat, how far is your car going?
Yeah.
So you got to make sure that, as you start growing, you want to make sure that hey, here's our objective. And that's why I think that, your vision and your goals, this stuff should be up on the wall where everybody sees it. So, it's kind of like what the Lord said, right? Make the vision, write it, make it plain, put it on the wall, that he that reads it may read it and run.
Yeah.
So I think that you want to be like, hey, this is the goal. We're all on board. We all good? Okay, cool. Like, now let's do it. You know what I mean? You don't have somebody that's going to be that flat tire that's going to be complaining at the water cooler, like, oh, this sucks, this whatever. Yeah, you gotta cut those.
Yeah, and I think the biggest piece is like the hiring process first. Like, let's be proactive rather than reactive. Yeah. Like if we could cut them out before even bringing them on, that's the best scenario. And I think putting that mission, vision, and those core values in place, presenting those to people beforehand, having certain questions that you look, to ask during the interview process that align with your guys' goals. For example, like we had somebody reach out to the salon wanting a position, and we are looking for somebody part-time right now, but I had sent our mission statement, our vision statement, our core values, all this. And then she responded with, okay, so do we still get paid? I don't even remember what she said, because as soon as she responded like, okay, and then do we still get paid, blah, 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 I'm like, you're not the right culture fit. Like, just from that one response alone, you're not even going to come in for an interview. So I think having those systems in place beforehand could save you so much time and headache on the back end. Yeah. My little secret, if you're late to the first interview, you're not getting hired. Yeah. And Crystal laughs and all of our employees know this now. So like if somebody does come in for an interview and they're late, in their heads they're like, well, that sucks. Yeah. Because that's like one of my non-negotiables is being late.
Well, yeah. I mean, you got to do better than that.
Which at this conference as well, this lady had mentioned a study that they did. It was NASA, and they could predict who would be a leader within the company simply by what they would do is the person interviewing would come in, trip, and fall. And depending on the person that they were going to interview's response to them tripping and falling and the way they laughed or went about the situation, could tell if they were going to be a leader or not 100% of the time, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. Just in your initial response to something like that can show if you're going to have a leader or not.
Yeah. Well, just think of the process of testing that, how long that took, how many people they had to go through to be able to get the right data to be able to determine that. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any tips, tricks for business owners this week that you would like to share or that came up this week?
Yeah, good question. So, I would say if I'm talking to depending on the business owner, right? But if we're talking to a new business owner, I would always say kind of the same thing that I tell everybody, stop focusing on the money. I get it. I do get it. We all have to live. We got to pay the bills. We got to put food on the table. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the Lord's not going to let us go hungry. So stop focusing on the money. Remember why you started, right? Write it down. Figure out what those goals are. Make sure the goals are measurable, not just like, oh, I want to do better. No, they got to be measurable. I do this all the time, especially with my children. I do that. Now they're good at it now, but at first they'd give me like, well, I want to lose weight. Well, what does that mean? No, give me something I can measure.
Yeah.
Give me an amount. So find out what your goal is, make it measurable, put it up on the wall. And I would say, honestly, speak life into it. I would tell you, like, every single day. I mean, obviously you got to do the work. You got to do the work. You got to do the things that you need to do. That's a given. We're not talking about that. But I'm saying you need to speak life into your business every day before you start. I could tell you that I have my big goal right in the bathroom, and in the every day at 5:00 in the morning. That's when it's going to start. So, man, I tell you, do it. Speak into it. Speak life into your business. And I'm going to I'm going to go back. So let's look at the template, right? We know that the Lord created everything in 6 days. He rested on the seventh. But how did he, what was the vehicle that he used for creation, right? It was communication. It was his voice. So follow the template and communicate over and over and over and over and over again until it happens. So that's what I would tell you. Keep it simple. Obviously we got to do the work, but find out what the goal is, make it measurable, put it up on the wall. I would even tell you to put it out there with people. Get an accountability partner. Don't be a secret agent. Put it out there. Now, sometimes people don't do that because, well, what if I fail? Who cares? Who cares? Like, think about if I was going to, hey, I need to lose some weight. I need to drop 10 pounds.
I do.
Imagine if I was like, oh, I'll just drop 10 pounds.
Yeah.
Or imagine if I was like, if I put it out there to everyone and be like, hey, I'm going to drop 10 pounds by this day.
Yep.
Yeah, then now they're going to hold me accountable. We all need people to hold us accountable. You will go farther in life with somebody holding you accountable than doing it on your own. So I guess that would be my kind of long-winded thing on what to tell you, especially if you're a new entrepreneur. If you're a business owner and you've been in this business for a while and you're not doing that, then you need to definitely do it. But get your goals down, write them up, put them on the wall, find somebody to hold you accountable, put your vision up on a mirror and speak life every single day. Speak it out loud until it happens.
Yeah. That accountability, hit. I think so many times, we want to not put it out there because we don't want the accountability, because we love the comfort. We live in comfort. And I think we have to step out of that comfort in order to grow. Yeah. You're never going to grow outside of that comfort. So, if it means accountability, that's what a weight trainer does at the gym. They hold you accountable. Yeah. That's what a teacher does. They hold you accountable to whatever they're teaching you, right? A mentor, they're going to hold you accountable. You need accountability. We have accountability throughout the Bible. We're accountable to what we do here on this earth. Yep. We're always accountable for our choices. Yeah. So put it out there and do it. Yeah. So I talked a little bit about the community at the beginning. For this last little bit here before we close this out, I wanted to touch on this a little bit that we're working on. In there, I'm going to be doing some marketing stuff, showing people how to use different tools and live demonstrations and trainings and things like that. Yeah. I wanted to touch on kind of what they can expect from you in there and how it can help them and go from there. Yeah. So if you're thinking about building something, or if you're an entrepreneur, or if you're a business owner, whatever level, 1, 2, or 3, you're going to want to be part of it because 1, you're going to be in an environment with other people helping you, pouring in you, teaching you things that you just don't know. You just don't know. You only know what you know. So that's going to be key. Then you're going to get weekly coaching. So you're going to be able to hop on, be poured into, learn, ask questions. You're going to be in this environment where you can do that. If you can't make it, we will record them and put them in there. But you're going to definitely want to try to make the live ones. And then it'll just be filled with a lot of worksheets, one sheets, other things where you're going to be able to go in there and learn about specific items. Here's the deal. Like I always tell people, you can spend a long time trying to figure it out on your own. It can take you forever. So the question is, why would you do that? Yeah. You know what I mean? So learn from other people that have done it, people that have done it at scale that could truly go in there and help you. So this environment's going to be an amazing environment that anyone serious,
if you're not serious, it's not going to be for you. We don't want you just to sign up and, pay up monthly and you don't do anything. That's not what we're looking for. We want it to be able to help people pull out that God-given dream that has been deposited in your heart and be, partners with you and help you get there. So,
yeah. And let us be that accountability partner for you. Like if you're worried that somebody's going to judge you, come into the group. Like we'll be your accountability partner, but we'll also be that encourager on the sideline for you as well.
Yeah, I like it. And let me give you your first little exercise. So if you are one where you're worried about kind of what other people think, I'm going to give you the first learning lesson. Step 1 to becoming a leader. You cannot worry about what other people think. Only worry about what God thinks.
Yes.
You know what I mean? If you worry about what other people think, you ain't leading anybody.
Yep.
Right. So kind of, work that muscle, tune that out, worry about what God says and what God thinks. And then ultimately you're going to be in good shape.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we look forward to seeing you guys on the website. There will be a button on there to get notified once that goes live. So go ahead and go on there, press the button if you're interested, fill out the form, and then you guys will be notified as soon as it goes live. Do you have anything else before we close this out?
That's it. Have a great weekend.
Awesome.
See you next week.
You guys have a wonderful week. We will see you next week.
Take care.
Bye.